Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are looking at the question today. Is Justin Baldoni's brand performative? And if it isn't, what may give it that feel for people who are maybe experiencing him for the first time or seeing an interview by him? Now, my name is Ashley Brianna Eve. Here we look at pop culture, power, and media manipulation through my background in branding and marketing. However, my background is also in spirituality. I connect with Justin on a lot of topics he talks about due to the spiritual aspect. And I look at it through a branding lens using BG5, which is the business application of the human design system. So to be here, you kind of have to enjoy both the logical aspects of pop culture, power, branding, but also the spiritual aspects. However, I feel like if you're drawn to Justin Baldoni, that is kind of your vibe anyway. And if it's not, then why do you like his brand? All right, let's dive in. Justin Baldoni's brand breakdown. This video is going to get no reach, but I refuse to be silenced, and I refuse. We're going to start with human design. Now, we're just going to do a quick note on his human design. When we're looking at his particular design, he has what's called the channel of struggle, which is a design of stubbornness. It's 28 to 38. I have this arrow here pointing towards it. That is an individual channel. It's an individual strength. So those lines are your strengths, inherent strengths. It's kind of like, for those that haven't explored human design or BG5, what I want you to think of when we're talking about strengths through the BG5 lens is kind of like a personality test in psychology. So in positive psychology, I also have a background in psychology and positive psychology. We might use the Gallup Strengths test or the VIA Character Strengths Finder. Those two tests, the Gallup and VIA, tend to be the go-to for finding your strengths because research shows us we tend to, as humans, be blind to what we're best at. So it's not that we're trying to tell you who you are with using a character strengths finder or BG5, which is, again, the business application of the human design system. The human design system itself is spiritual awakening. It's not that we're telling you who you are. The whole point is helping you see what you are actually best at so you can leverage that in life and business. Because again, research shows we are blind to what we are best at. So when we're looking at these colored lines in human design, that's going to be called a channel. But I want you to think of it through a strengths perspective. Now, his design of stubbornness, this channel, is activated through a lot of different activations: the moon, Mercury, Mars, Pluto, sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, Pluto on the personality side, and on the design side, the sun, Mercury, and Saturn. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what that means here because we will get way off track. But what I want you to think of is his life path is really learning what's worth fighting for. What is it worth fighting for? What is your energy supposed to go towards? And so for him, masculinity and the expression, the brand expression of Man Enough in Wayfarer Studios, for him is worth fighting for. And so he's developed this incredible brand around something that he thinks is worth fighting for, a cause, stories, creativity, self-expression that he feels is worth fighting for. So right off the bat, I'm going to say no. His brand is not performative because if we're looking at this from a spirituality and strengths perspective, he is quite literally designed to fight for something that he's had a struggle for that maybe wasn't picked up well by others initially, because individuality is often not picked up by the collective well, right? So a lot of the community, a lot of Justin Baldoni fans notice and are very attuned to how someone like maybe Nick Viall, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Nick Viall, might not receive Justin well, or how in some interviews he gets a little bit of pushback. That's very normal for someone with a strong individual identity, because the collective, when you're really strong in who you are as an individual, the reality is you're pushing back against traditional values. The reality is you're pushing back towards what people believe to be true and something that's been deeply rooted, usually for a long time. And so his 38 to 28, what he's found is worth fighting for, the collective may have not caught up yet to that. And so he does have to fight for it to even get it seen. Now, when we also look at his other strength, the 27 to 50, This one is what's called tribal circuitry. It's a design of custodianship. And very briefly, what that tells us is he's here for a certain group of people. He's really not meant for collective consumption, right? So, how we might see that in his art, in his movies, in the stories he's choosing is not, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this because it's going to be a blockbuster and I'm going to make $1 billion off of this movie. No, he's creating and allowing his expression to come through for a very specific group of people. And I think we saw that with It Ends With Us, where his focus on the marketing was really speaking to survivors, really speaking to those who have experienced DV. He wasn't going for the more broad and general grab your girlfriends and florals and come see the movie. He was, and there's, of course, a lot to say about how inappropriate that was, but it was very specific. I am speaking to survivors. I am amplifying the voices of survivors. So when I look at his chart, one, he knows what's worth fighting for. And two, he's here to support a very specific group of people. So he's really not meant for overall collective consumption where he's putting ultimately money before creativity or money before values or money before art. It's always for him going to be this thing I'm passionate about because I went through it. I experienced it, especially when we look at his profile 3-5 in human design, which is your public role. It's how people are meant to see you and experience you, but also how you fulfill your life purpose. It's through trial and error for him. And through trial and error, he becomes the leader in a new way for his community. So we see he's fought for things. He's gone through it himself. He's experienced the highs and the lows. And because he's gone through those trial and error experiences, essentially what he's saying in his brand is, I've gone through it so you don't have to. I've gone through it so the next generation doesn't have to. So if you listen to me and listen to my stories and listen to my experiences, I can help the next generation as well as this generation do things in a way that's more fulfilling, in a way that's healthier, in a way that's a new path forward, yes, but what should have been the path all along. And so that's really his messaging when we look at his chart. And it's all going to be based off of his experiences, the trial and error he's gone through, the things that that he now knows are worth fighting for, the values he knows are worth fighting for, and then share them with his quote unquote tribe, that tribal circuitry. So from a human design perspective, right off the bat, I'm telling you guys, this guy's not performative. This is exactly on brand for Justin Baldoni. In fact, I would say you need to amplify it even more. Now, let's look at his brand archetypes. For those that are new here, we talk about brand archetypes a lot because, again, my background's also in psychology. I was actually a counselor for many years. I worked in domestic violence shelters, women's shelters, group homes with children and youth. I worked in neuro-linguistic programming, equine assisted therapy. So I worked a lot in the field of psychology. So that's why I actually love fusing psychology with branding and marketing, and why I love fusing both the logical psychology with the spiritual. Now, branding archetypes are based on Carl Jung's theory of personality archetypes. There's 12 universal patterns of human behavior and brand identity, and we use them to create compelling and relatable brand personalities. Now, I did a video yesterday that talked about why Blake Lively's brand has always felt a little bit off, why it's felt like maybe you couldn't really put your finger on it, but you could never really relate to her. You could never figure her out. And therefore, you didn't really like her, maybe. We talked about Blake's yesterday. Today, and also why I really want to do Justin's brand today is it shows, because yesterday we talked about how Blake's brand didn't work because she had way too many brand archetypes at play that really didn't, there was no bridge between them. They weren't linked. And so it felt confusing. It felt really messy. And with Justin's, what I want to show you is someone that's done it really well, is bringing in the nuance and the textures and the flavors of a really dynamic brand, but it doesn't feel messy. It feels very cohesive. And that's what you want in your brand, is bring in that multidimensionality, the layers, the nuance, the texture, without it feeling confusing with someone going, well, like, who is this person? Now, when we're looking at brand personalities and the brand archetypes, they are essentially universal symbolic character patterns. What we want to look at is, how do you emotionally resonate with people? Because someone, for example, let's look at this graph here. Someone that is more maybe the outlaw Harvey Davidson, they're likely not going to, and it doesn't mean all the time, but they're likely not going to resonate with a brand that's really strong leading with the magician or someone that is really the outlaw archetype. They're probably not really going to resonate with a brand that is more the caretaker, for example, or the innocent with Dove. They're going to pick brands that match who they be, that core archetype. Now, we all have all 12 personality archetypes within us. We're usually going to be leading with one strong one. So, for example, I tend to lead with the outlaw, but I have multiple brand archetypes that I bring into my brand. Something I say to my clients all the time is not all of you needs to be in your brand. It shouldn't. You are multidimensional, you're multifaceted. If you try to bring all 12 in, people are going to be left very confused, and you're going to be making your work so much harder to try and explain all these different aspects of self. So, an example of this is makeup that I tend to buy. So, I'm an outlaw. I lead with the outlaw in life and in business. Makes business really easy because I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. I lead with the outlaw. And let's pick makeup. Makeup I tend to buy is Rihanna and Kat Von D. Those tend to be the brands that I purchase. And I know Kat doesn't own it anymore. But anyway, those tend to be the brands I purchase. Now, those are outlaw archetypes. So I'm naturally drawn to those types of makeup brands, even though at the end of the day, like I don't know much about their brands other than it's Rihanna and Kat Von D and they're outlaws. So we tend to be drawn to people and brands that are similar to us. It's also why I say all the time when people leave comments on creators' comment section, they're like, oh, you should be more like this, or you should be more like that person, or you should talk like this, or talk too fast, you talk too slow, you're too much of this, you're too less of that. Yeah, someone's building a brand. And just because you don't resonate with it doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. It means you're the problem and you're on someone's page that really doesn't resonate with you. And I don't mean you're the problem in sense like you have to change. I'm saying you're the problem in sense you don't resonate with that person. So either you continue to listen because you enjoy their content regardless, right? Doesn't mean you always have to 100% vibe with someone. In fact, I think it's sad when all we do is surround ourselves with echo chambers and all we do is surround ourselves with people that 100% are in alignment with everything we think and everything we say. I think that's a sad way to go through life, honestly. I think we should position ourselves and put ourselves around people that are very different than us and that have different views than us and intellectually challenge us. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you think someone should change to meet how you want them to be, then you're the problem in that relationship. You either have to change yourself. So it's a personal relationship and you're like, oh, I have to grow to match this person's growth as an example. Or you realize, okay, this creator is not for me. And I'm just going to exit stage left. And, you don't have to announce it to them, but everyone's creating a brand. Now, when we're looking at Justin's, I can find 3 core brand archetypes that he has created a brand around, whether intentionally or not. I think many brands do intentionally leverage brand archetypes. Some just accidentally do. So I don't know whether Justin did this intentionally or not, but when I look at all the brand archetypes, there's 3 that stand out. Now, I do believe it's an authentic brand. So I'm just going to say that again. It is an authentic brand, in my opinion. The archetypes he leads with can also kind of come across as pretentious sometimes to the wrong people, right? So the wrong people, if he's like a content creator, there might be people in his comments going, oh, you're too this, you're too soft, you're too that, those views are too out there, all this like you're too much, you're too much, you're too much. The brand archetypes he's chosen tend to attract that type of energy for people that aren't right for him. And when we look at his human design body graph, again, he's not meant for everyone. I don't believe anyone is meant for everyone anyway. That's the fastest way to kill your brand is trying to be for everyone. However, like he really is for a certain group of people, his message. It's art first rather than material money. The money, the abundance follows the art. And that's really what we're looking at with his brand. So number 1, he is the creator, the visionary builder. And we see this in how he talks about Wayfarer Studios, how he talks about Man Enough. We see this over and over and over again. And I have a selection of different interviews to back up each brand archetype. And it's hard to find the ones that are my favorite, I'm going to be quite honest, because the reality is he has so many great interviews out there that it was hard to pick my favorites. But I think I picked a good selection. The core message with the creator is he's not just talking about masculinity, he's building something new through media, movements, and story. And we see this as well when he talks to Rainn Wilson on Rainn Wilson's podcast. He talks about that a lot. But a lot of interviews that you can track with him, he talks about the meaning behind Wayfarer Studios, the meaning behind Man Enough. And it's so much bigger than him, right? Like, yes, he's the personal brand at the forefront of it, but he's really creating a movement. And that's something that I adore for any brand. I've said for years, I have old videos, I think, still on YouTube in regards to this before I had deleted a lot of my old stuff. I said this for years, where branding itself, traditional branding, is dying. It's dying. Movements are what's taking over. And this is the same thing with PR. Traditional PR is dying, and the PR industry has got to catch up. Blake Lively is a great example on how traditional PR is not working anymore. One of my favorite quotes that fit the creator archetype is, I am always doing things I can't do. That's how I get to do them. And that really fits with him, right? The trial and error experience, doing things you can't do, challenging yourself, trial and error to help other people, using your own experience to help other people. The creator notices and acts on the need for innovation, reinvention, and reinterpretation. So again, we're going to see this a lot through his views on masculinity, through his views that have essentially built the brand of Man Enough. He's reinterpreting what it means to be man enough. He's reinterpreting and reinventing masculinity in a way that's more embodied and grounded, rather than, what some people might refer to as like that toxic masculinity or patriarchy or whatever the case may be. He's really bringing us back into an innovative view that reinterprets what it means to be man enough. And I actually love that tagline of Man Enough. And they have an impact, the creators, through their innovations and their self-expression. Self-expression is huge for the creators. It's not just creating something to make money, right? It's not, I'm going to create this movie because it's going to make $1 billion worldwide. It's, I'm creating this movie because it's innovative. It's reinventing the industry. It's reinventing perspectives and how we see things. And it's going to move us forward in some way. It's going to move humanity forward. It's going to move the viewer forward. That is the creator. And I challenge anyone to find an interview where Justin doesn't mention that in some way. So when I look at a sample of his body of work in terms of interviews and the work he's done, the creator is a no-brainer as his leading brand archetype. The creator as well has a very strong inner critic. And we also see this with Justin in interviews where he talks about that inner critic, where he talks about fears that he has. And so there's a strong inner critic with this archetype, and it can cause mental health or physical health issues related, to their self-expression. This might be getting a little bit spiritual, but it's also part of the more logical brand building and understanding the creator. When your self-expression has been stifled, when you're not able to express yourself in the way that you desire to express yourself, you tend to see like mental health, depression, a lot of people, even not just clinical depression, but if people are hitting really tough times, they'll talk about going through big struggles. That can be a big one. Depression, that can be a big one for the creator when they're feeling that self-expression has been stifled, has been taken away from them. Sometimes this creator archetype can be seen as pretentious, or maybe even that they're better than, because they're so passionate. Like there's so much passion in the creator archetype for their innovations, for their ideas, how they see things, how they're interpreting things, how they're moving us forward. And that gives them life. Sorry, I just leaned back in my chair and it squeaked. That gives them life, how they're seeing things and how it can change the world. And if you don't, if you're really stuck in what psychology calls a fixed mindset, right? So Justin's someone that we would say has a growth mindset. If you're really stuck in a fixed mindset, you're stuck in your view of the world and it's, your way or the highway, and you don't want to be intellectually challenged and you don't want your views to be challenged. This can be seen as someone that's really pretentious. Oh, he just think he's better than us. And we see that in, what's Cafe Gratitude doing here, right? With the little snipe at him from Nice Pool and Deadpool and Wolverine. It's this, he's got to be thinking he's better than us energy, because I genuinely don't think Ryan and Blake have the capacity at this point in time to understand the depth of the creator archetype and those that go into it. They're very complex individuals, the creator archetype. And as I always say to my clients, that complexity is where true art is born. That complexity is where true innovation is born. You can't be simple in how you see things and innovate, because innovation with the creator means that you're taking something from essentially nothing. If we want to get really spiritual, you see beyond the material plane and into the quantum field, and you're collapsing something out of nothing. You're collapsing something that doesn't yet exist, a way forward that doesn't yet exist. And again, that can be taken as, who do you think you are? Oh, now I'm singing Imagine Dragons in my head. Great song. I like Imagine Dragons a lot. Anyway, they do have this inner critic. And that, again, we have to come back to, now I'm so distracted by the song playing in my head. I have ADHD, so sometimes, my mind's just off doing different things. When we're looking at the creator archetype, they find meaning in life through their art. So someone like Justin, whether he decides to come back to Hollywood or not is totally for him to decide, obviously. But no matter what, I really believe that he's going to be creating in some way, because that's how he's going to find the meaning in life, through his art, through his expression. And we can really see creator archetypes be negatively impacted by not being able to have that self-expression. And I imagine that there's probably a bit of a struggle right now as well for him. I don't know him personally, so I can't say for sure. But with the lawsuit going on, he's taken what I think is a smarter approach to PR and branding right now. And he's just being quiet. You see pictures of him once in a while out and about in Hawaii, but overall he's being quiet. And I do imagine that's got to be difficult for a creator archetype, because they just thrive on creation. Now, I have a couple videos that we are going to play. I have little snippets from each creator. I thought that would be fun to see in his own words, but we'll just be able to play short snippets from them because, well, or else I can get copyright struck. So let's look at, so this is Justin Baldoni on Gents Talk podcast. Sorry is not enough. Healthy masculinity. It ends with us. We're going to skip over to 11:35.
I haven't given myself time to recover or time to heal. I had a intense year, a lot of material success, and a lot of emotional stress. It's very hard on me and my family. And I wear a lot of hats and I carry a lot. Because I love what I do. I love the company I built, the brand that we've built. I love the people that work for us. I love the movies that we make. I love the impact that we have. And yet, sometimes it's easy to, as you said earlier, fall back into our programming. And
so I want to hear from you guys as we go in the comments, if you can see these archetypes take shape in the way he speaks. Now, again, some people just naturally, so for example, so if we go back, when I originally got immersed, I started out in the psychology field as a counselor, and then I saw the benefits, to show you guys a little bit of my timeline of how I got here and how all this connects. Because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're a counselor, and then branding and marketing, spirituality. So I started out as a counselor, and at the time I didn't work out. I didn't really eat healthy, and I was struggling with my mental health in many ways. Working as a counselor, especially in jails with young girls and in group homes and high stress situations, I wasn't really taking care of myself. And so I started to see the benefits of exercise and eating healthy, which led me to getting a holistic nutrition degree as well. I love studying. I love learning, guys. I am always learning. And personal training certification, and studying personal training and athleticism and the impact on mental health, etc. And so that's how I got into the health field. And then when I got into the health field, originally I sucked at building a business. I knew I was the best at what I did. And I really didn't know how to build a business at that point in time. We're going back like, oh my goodness. Like I actually, I'm not even going to say a timeline. We're going back a long time. And so I started studying branding and marketing. And I started working at little studios and learning from the owners on how they built really impactful brands. And I had the good fortune of meeting someone that was an expert in branding and marketing, had studied it, and was really a leading expert in Canada on it. And so I started to learn branding and marketing through that person. And I had not learned about branding archetypes and started to infuse the psychology with the branding and marketing until I would say about 6 or 7 years ago. And that's when I found branding archetypes. And my brand had always, every brand I built, even as a counselor, had always been the outlaw because I was just always, I couldn't be anything but authentically me. But it started to make sense. And then when I started to learn about branding archetypes, I learned how to bring multidimensionality and nuance and texture to not just my brand, but other brands. My brand blew up personal training and holistic nutrition. And I was actually training for the CrossFit Games, going back a long time, and blew up my back really bad. And I had sponsorships. My branding was so exceptional at that time that I used to compete with my horses. My horses had sponsorships before they even did one show. Like that was unheard of. Like my young horses, I had sponsorships after having been out of the field for like 10 years and competing, but I just understood how to build really powerful brands. So anyway, to make a long story short, is I got here and I understood branding archetypes through my background in both psychology and understanding like the actual science of branding and marketing. And then I infused spirituality because I realized people like me, people like Justin can't just do something for the money. We have to do it because we're passionate about it. So that's where spirituality came in. But now when I see someone's brand, so Justin, I just think in terms of the psychology behind it and the branding archetypes behind it. He may never have intentionally created a creator brand. It's probably just who he is. Just like every brand I've done was always leading with the outlaw because it's just authentically who I was. And so let me know if you can hear the creator archetype within him. And I would love one day, if anyone knows Justin, I would love to connect with him one day. Obviously, he can't talk now about anything. I would love to know, did he know, or was it just so authentically who he was? And creating it intentionally doesn't mean it's inauthentic. It's just understanding who you are and how to position it at the forefront, right? That's all it is. It's not now it's inauthentic. You just, oh, okay, I understand the psychology behind it. I understand the energy behind it. So if human design and spirituality is all about energy speaks before you do. Well, if he leads with the creator and the vision and the passion and the world creation and the movements, well, he just naturally was leading with it.
And be swept away in the current of self and be kind of overtaken by the wave of success and opportunity. And I sent this text this morning and I just said, I love you both. I just need you to know I'm not in the best place. I woke up at 4:30 this morning. My son's had the flu. I'm not feeling great. My heart was racing. I'm noticing that, I'm having some anxiety. And when I check in with myself, I realize that I just haven't given myself the time to heal.
So looking back, we know that this was around the time of Blake taking control of his movie, etc. He got sick because of it. I'd love to hear, do you hear the creator archetype? So leave a comment as you go, as you see the videos and as we go through each archetype. I'd love to hear your feedback. To me, it's just so obvious. And you also hear how his health was so negatively impacted by what happened, which is the creator archetype. His art was stolen from him. His self-expression was ripped away from him. And the creator archetype, that can send you into a spiral. That can send you into depression, anxiety, mental health concerns, because that's how you fulfill your purpose is through your art. Now let's skip ahead. I mean, there's a lot of, he even quotes bell hooks in this, which I love. I have so many bell hooks books.
Authority. I might give a data point. I might speak like I'm speaking now and, seem right or righteous. And yet I am really willing to have my point of view changed.
Do you ever find as someone who...
Do you guys hear the self-awareness within? I just love this interview for the creator archetype. The self-awareness within the creator Like, I might come across as righteous. I might come across as I think I'm right, but I am open to having my view changed. I love this man. I genuinely hope one day, not that I think it would ever happen, but I hope I have a chance to meet him. I think we would have so much to talk about. I'd love to have him to the farm sanctuary.
Does the work that you do on the platforms that you have to openly say, I don't know something, or when you're in your, when it's just you by yourself, realizing that you don't know how to do something, do you ever feel like an imposter?
Oh, I think I'll speak for myself. I feel like an imposter all the time.
I struggle with that one.
Well, I think we all do. I genuinely believe if we were honest with ourselves, it'd be nearly impossible with the way that we've set up society to not feel that way. Because we live at a time that, how do I say this? We live in an age where capitalism is rampant and it feeds off of insecurity and the feeling like we're not enough. And so do
you guys hear that creator archetype? Like, he's even taking on capitalism, and he's talking about what I said, which is the art comes first. Now, I've had some requests to include this interview with Nick Viall. If you've been around for a while, you'll remember originally I had no idea who Nick Viall was. One of my first videos talking about pop culture and this case, you guys thought it was so funny, but I had absolutely no idea who he was. I don't think he would like that. Someone doesn't know who he was, but what do I know? You guys have asked me to include this because in this interview, he stands up for himself. He challenges perception, and in uncomfortable ways. He has uncomfortable conversations. And to keep it short, I picked 2 spots, but this is a great interview to look at how body language is interesting. You can tell that, there's maybe a little bit, I don't know if frustration's the right word. Frustration is something you're going to see with a generator in human design. And also compassion. I genuinely believe, even though there might be a piece of Justin that's like, no, you're not hearing me, there's also compassion for people on the other side. And that's why I really believe he's someone that can bring this message really far. But anyway, Tundra has joined us for this clip. He was begging to come on my lap, so here he is. We'll see how long this lasts. All right, let's break down this Nick Viall podcast and a couple snapshots from it.
Not worrying about my interests as it relates to not be like I never hunted. I didn't fish. I wasn't an outdoorsman guy. And I grew up in Wisconsin. So all my peers.
I have some good friends from Kenosha.
Oh, really? Yeah. And so that was not the norm. I mean, other than getting into high school and being, it was.
So you didn't really care about anybody else's approval?
Well, I'm sure at some points I did, but masculinity was nothing I really worried about. I always kind of knew I wasn't an atypical kind of macho guy, and that never really bothered me because I guess I was always confident in myself in other aspects, whether it was be sports or other things. I
think overall, the first thing we can see from Nick Viall interviewing Justin, I don't know if you can stay up here, kid. I don't know if you can stay up here. You're causing a ruckus. Oh, thank you for the kisses. Thank you for the kisses. Is Nick Viall's really missing the point? Like, he's lost the plot on what Justin's trying to say, first of all.
I've been very lucky in terms of things I've been good at or the privileges I've had and things like that. And I attribute a lot of that to the love of my parents and how they raised me. I mean, I remember the first time crying into my mom's arms over a girl. I was in the 6th grade, and there's probably been.
Okay, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. We're going to let Tunny down. There you go, buddy. It's kind of frustrating to listen to, if I'm being quite honest, because Nick, again, has lost the plot. And he's saying, well, I didn't worry if I didn't meet traditional views of masculinity because I'm tall and I'm good looking. Okay.
This experience doesn't mean it's the norm out there.
What do you think? I mean, do you think it's the norm?
I don't think my experience is
Yeah.
the norm. No.
No.
What do I think? What is the norm?
Like the norm, your experience, like how you didn't feel like you had to perform, if you will, is kind of what I'm gathering from what you're
No,
saying.
I think I've been very lucky in other like, for example, like being tall,
Yeah.
Okay, so he links it back again. It's all about Nick, and he's tall and good looking apparently, so he hasn't struggled with this. But you can see how Justin like does challenge him in certain ways, and he does it throughout in a very kind way, but does challenge what Nick's saying. We're going to skip ahead again.
I feel like
there's a lot of men that are hurting right now.
I feel like there's a lot of growing hurt with young men and a lot of disenfranchised men, and I want to continue to figure out ways to try to connect with men who might not feel like, if they're not 6'2" or if they're not 6 foot, or they feel like they don't have the looks that other people have. How can we give them the confidence? And
I just have to say, I don't know how Justin's it. This is so shallow. I don't know Nick from Adam, but this is so shallow.
I'm curious for you is, how do you kind of reconcile between self-love and being enough, which I think is great, and being your best self versus like, hey, I love myself, but how do I invest in myself to make certain improvements? So whatever that is, whatever your goals are. So how do you kind of reconcile between those?
So I see why he likes Blake and Ryan. Word salad. All right.
Those two mindsets of just being enough,
like acceptance and accountability.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. I think that I talk in the first book in Man Enough about the why ladder. Figuring out why we do things is important. Like there's this whole thing about self-love. I don't write about self-love. I write about enoughness. I think that most people struggle with self-love. And I think there's also this very trend.
So he also corrects him, right? So he's confident to correct. He's confident to bring the topic back to like, I don't talk about self-love. I talk about enoughness. And he's so powerful in the words he uses and how he speaks, which I just love witnessing. We have one more spot I want to look at. And this is in regards to a caller. And I really like his response. Whoops.
And she might have reasons why, like when I feel wronged, yes, loyalty matters to me. And we have very different perceptions of loyalty as people, and certainly when I feel wronged, I want my friends to have my back. But when other friends are involved, I have been very much disappointed and frustrated at how my friends prioritize my feelings versus others. But does that mean I was right over them? I'm not so sure. It just meant, that was my expectation that they didn't meet. And I just feel like just communicating your expectations, how they can meet in the future, will better serve you in the long run. Whether you stay friends with her or not, I think you'll just feel good about handling it in a more, open communication way, so to speak.
All right. So Justin's next. And again, you can see him challenge both their perspectives. I really like what he does. It's someone that you would expect to be a counselor or even a spiritual advisor. I'm sure he's done a lot of therapy because he validates Nick first and then challenges everyone. I really like it.
Yeah,
Any
I
other
can
thoughts,
see that.
Justin?
I feel like I just watched this on Netflix. This was a fantastic story. Thank you. I think Nick's advice is great. I would encourage you to look at yourself and how you've handled it and what your feelings are around it, and before you go and burn any other houses down. Sometimes when we're not sober emotionally, we can make decisions that don't just hurt other people but hurt us in the long run. And it doesn't quite sound like it's an emotionally sober environment for anybody. And I would just also argue that you broke up with him, so you can choose to suffer.
True.
But it seems like you wanted this to end, and now it's time for you to, when you break up with someone, you have to let them go. You release them.
Yeah.
So you don't monitor their locations.
Justin makes.
It was a very odd situation of monitoring her ex's locations. It was very weird. They make a joke of like, are you calling in from outside his house? But see, Justin very kindly challenges both of them and their perspectives. And I have no doubt, I mean, obviously I was not on the set of It Ends With Us, but I have no doubt that he did that on the set as well, where he pushed back a little bit and stood his ground. And maybe at one point, just for the sake of getting the movie done, he did start to acquiesce to what they wanted. But I would love to hear how you see the creator archetype through these interviews with him. And next, we have a short clip from one of my favorite interviews, and it's with Rainn Wilson on Justin Baldoni's Spiritual Resilience, Soul Bloom, episode 27.
Stories going. Maybe there is something happening that is terrible, or we're talking about a social.
So he's talking about, sorry, I should have put a little bit of context to this. He's talking about Wayfarer Studios and what they create.
Issue, or maybe there is, as an example, like maybe this is about a serial killer, but is there a story about a serial killer where
with a heart of gold?
Not necessarily redemption.
Would you cast me in that?
But you 100%
Serial killer with a heart of gold.
In fact, I think we should.
Guilty.
Yeah. But maybe there's a story about a serial killer that, maybe it's not about the serial killer,
Sure.
but there's murder in it, and then there's something else happen. It's just about thinking outside the box.
Sure. Get Out is the perfect example.
Get Out
of
is the perfect
a
example.
great horror
Yeah.
film that also like hits
Social issues, and Jordan Peele's doing, and there's so many amazing.
So notice what he said, think outside the box. So for me, language is huge. I really listen to what people say. And so he talks about thinking outside the box. That's the creator archetype. He talks about hitting social issues. So yes, it might be that I do a horror film one day, but is it really a horror film? Like there's still something that people are being moved through and with and towards.
Stories that are being told. What we've decided to do is we want
At
Wayfarer at
Wayfarer.
Wayfarer. We want Wayfarer Studios. We want, when you see the Wayfarer logo, when you see a Wayfarer Studios movie, that it's going to be entertaining, and at the end of it, you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to leave people feeling down or depressed about their life. We want to leave people feeling hopeful. We want to stir up some shit.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's a positive ending in some way, or a hopeful ending, or the protagonist learns something, and we can take that with them. I don't want to make movies that leave people down. We have the news, we have social media. We're living at a time where
So I love that. I love how eloquently Justin pulls in the creator archetype with this interview as well. And he talks about there being a bigger meaning behind it, right? It's not just making a movie to make a movie or to shock people. It's creating a movement. He creates a world that you're brought into, and he wants you to leave feeling hopeful. So he's also reinventing how he views the experience of going to see a movie. Now, I would say the second archetype for Justin Baldoni is the sage, the truth seeker. The sage is going to be deeply rooted in wisdom, intelligence, and truth seeking. Now, I had gone back and forth, I'll admit, with the magician versus the sage for Justin as a secondary archetype. And the magician is Disney, where dreams come true. And that feels too mystic for him. For him, and what I feel when I'm immersed in his brand, which is all what brand building and world building is connecting emotionally, is a truth seeker, is wisdom and intelligence through truth seeking, not the mystical aspect of where dreams come true, right? It's not this fluffy, it's not airy, it's not just out there, it's not just a concept, it's let's find the truth. Now, with the sage archetype, there's this fear of being duped or ignorant, and you can also be seen as arrogant or out of touch. The foundational belief is that thinking is what defines the human experience, and truth is the ultimate goal. So once again, you're moving humanity forward. You're moving people forward. You're challenging norms or perceptions and bringing a new truth forward as the sage. This archetype is immersed in the inner landscape of knowledge and contemplation. They're lifelong learners, always balancing tradition with transcendence and growth. So again, it's not let's get rid of masculinity, let's get rid of all of this. It's how do we balance it with transcendence and growth and truth seeking, a new way forward? Examples of the sage are Confucius, Yoda, Morpheus, Jane Goodall, and the Smithsonian. And let's watch a clip from Man Enough.
I challenge you to see if you can use the same qualities that you feel make you a man to go deeper into yourself, your strength, your bravery, your toughness. Can we redefine what those mean and use them to explore our hearts? Are you brave enough to be vulnerable, to reach out to another man when you need help, to dive headfirst into your shame? Are you strong enough to be sensitive, to cry whether you are hurting or you're happy, even if it makes you look weak? Are you confident enough to listen to the women in your life, to hear their ideas and their solutions, to hold their anguish and actually believe them, even if what they're saying is against you? And will you be man enough to stand up to other men when you hear locker room talk, when you hear stories of sexual harassment, when you hear your boys talking about grabbing ass or getting her drunk? Will you actually stand up and do something?
So that's a clip from Man Enough. And I love that he also pulls through the creator there where he talks about redefining. So it's just this beautiful fusion of the sage and the creator in a 1-minute clip. I also found this, and in this interview, it is Undefining Masculinity with Justin Baldoni, Better Together podcast, it looks like. We're going to start at minute 9. This is, I love, oh, they're all my favorite, but this is a really good one as well.
Different set of things. The spiritual versions of our arms and our legs and our eyes and our ears. And those things can only be developed while we're here on our own accord, because we have free will to develop those things. And how do we develop those spiritual things? Through tests and through tribulations. We develop those things when we're put through the spiritual gym, when we're put in situations that frustrate us or make us angry, that are uncomfortable. What are those things? Trustworthiness, love, kindness, steadfastness, forbearance, peace, justice, right? You go on and on and on.
Interesting. He uses the word frustration, which is also the generator aspect. But this is the sage, a grounded sage, right? The magician's a little bit more up here, a little bit more airy, a little bit more mythical, not as tangible. This is the sage. And it's just so beautifully brought through here. I love this interview. All right, we're skipping ahead.
Their pain and their stories and the stuff that happened to them to educate me, to prepare me, because that's not how masculinity works. We're not allowed to share those things. We completely lost that rite of passage. But what if the rite of passage was men being vulnerable with each other and sharing their traumas and their stories, so to prepare boys for what's to come, to say, don't do this. This happened to me. This is what it looks like. And it's okay, because you mentioned this earlier. I want to just read this real quick, if it's okay.
So again, he's pulling through the creator archetype so beautifully as he's talking about spirituality and redefining and reimagining what this looks like for men. And because I love this interview so much, we're going to look at one more clip.
I want self-love. I go, no one has, who really has self-love? I know people in love with themselves.
Right.
I know that, especially in Hollywood.
They think they're in love with themselves.
Exactly.
In reality, they're empty. They're feeling empty.
100%. Yeah.
But
self-awareness
is such it's like this. Self-love is such an impossible thing. And it unfortunately puts a lot of pressure on people. And it's like, and you get lost. Self-love becomes ego a lot because nobody knows how to do it. It's like self-love is like, oh no, it becomes this whole hippy dippy thing. I don't know how to self-love. I know how to be self-aware. I know how to be let's be compassionate to ourselves. Like that. Self-compassion, self-empathy, self-forgiveness. Those things maybe can lead to self-love, but that self-awareness of like what makes me feel good. Well,
I just love that. That is the sage through and through. And in this interview, they actually reference a couple individuals who I would say their brand is the sage as well, which is so interesting. But we're seeing like not just whimsical talk. It's very grounded. It's something that's tangible. It's practical. You can apply it to your life right away. And I agree with him. I actually see a lot in the spiritual world because I've been in the spiritual world for a long time as well. A lot of even spirituality or spiritual growth is just ego led. It's this idea of if I can just control things enough, if I can control myself or understand myself enough, then I get what I want. And as soon as we start getting into this mindset of like, my mind wants this thing. And so if I can be spiritually aware enough, or if I can do the work enough, well, then I can get that thing. Then I can manifest the thing that my mind wants. Then I can manifest the thing that I think I want. That's ego led. That's not spiritually led. That's not soul led. That's ego led. And so that's essentially what he's talking about here as well, is a lot of this work, and I've seen it over the years, especially when I work with clients who are looking to build, a business that is soul led and aligned and something they're passionate about, and the art comes first. I work with a lot of creatives, authors, artists, personal brands where the art has to come first. And this is a part of the piece of deconditioning, is how do we get back to a place where the art actually comes first, where we release the confines of the mind and what the mind believes to be true, the conditioning that's told you what you think you want, what you think you should have, and actually go after what you genuinely want. And that's what he's speaking about here, because once the ego is leading, you can't call that spiritual development. You can't call it actual self-love. You can't call it actual spiritual awakening. It's not. It's the ego. And there's some interesting insights on this one. I will preface it by saying this is not my stamp of approval for Jay Shetty. We'll just leave it at that. So let's start at minute 16. And I think this is a great question.
My personalities to appeal to women and appeal to the opposite sex. So I would switch who I was,
Of course.
so that a certain type of person would like me. What have you found from giving that TED talk, doing that research, doing that work up until that point in your life? What did you find out about identity? And on that deeper spiritual level, I'd love to hear that from you. I love how you said that you were not using, but engaging a viewpoint around something more surface level to talk about something deeper.
Well, I think all of our issues are inherently spiritual, but you can't snap your fingers and fix a spiritual problem unless people are willing to go there. And as you know, having been a monk, and
He wasn't a monk. Well,
me, every day waking up and struggling, the inherent, the connection that an individual has with their creator, God, the universe. I mean, even God is a buzzword now for people. Like, God is triggering to people, which is a bizarre thing. Like, people are so anti-religion now that, and because they've had such terrible experiences, in whether it be their churches or,
and so I just love, again, how he brings the spiritual in there. That's the sage.
well, why do you want to do that? Because the third why is going to be because I want people to remember that I did. Or, and, you look at this hustle mentality, this world that we're living in on, where we're showing our lives to everybody. And then I just look at them and saying, like, well, what's driving you to do that? Why are you sharing that? Why are you broadcasting live on Instagram? Who are you talking to? And what are you trying to say? Right. And sometimes I think about the future and wondering, like, if an alien civilization came down and discovered the remains of our 2019, 2020, what would they see? They'd see billions of people all over the world broadcasting themselves and taking pictures of themselves instead of seeing the moments around them. And the other day, it was funny.
I love that. And he's not saying, he's a creator as well, right? He is a filmmaker. He's not saying don't create. He's saying be present in what is in your life outside of those creations as well. And I just love his perspective on all of this. This is the sage through and through. And I want you guys to let me know in the comments, do you see it?
In the future, the crime itself will be the punishment.
Yeah.
The goal is to get to a place in civilization, right, where we are so spiritually grounded that the very act of the crime itself will be all the punishment that's needed. Like, that's where we want to go.
Oh,
right?
wow.
That's where we want to get.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how fast can we come back? Oh, I didn't feel good. All right, I'm back on course.
Yeah. And
right?
it's like the pain of committing the crime is the punishment.
That's
right?
it. Like,
it's that
the remorse, knowing that we displeased, right? Awesome. Like, that's where we have to get to, which is why when I say, like, all of these problems are spiritual in their core.
Yes.
Like, you could look at everything, like the prison, like you talk about the prison industrial complex. Like,
all right, so we'll pause there. Again, talking about this, all these problems are spiritual at their core. That is the sage, my friends. All right, the final archetype that I believe he rounds out his brand with is the guardian, which is compassion and emotional depth. Now, you could almost, and I could see how people might say the caregiver, it's too soft. It's not really, it doesn't give the nuance and the texture to what he brings to the table. So I ended up going with the guardian. And One of the quotes that I always link back to the Guardian is, to live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. By Mary Oliver. The strengths of the Guardian, there's this desire to offer loving insight or oversight. There's this protective aspect. And I believe we see that with Man Enough and his brand. There's this protective aspect around young men coming up, but also men now, and helping them see a reinvention of masculinity, essentially through the Man Enough brand. There's holding firm beliefs despite pushback. So the Guardian isn't a pushover. They will hold, they're open. The Guardian's open, right, to seeing things differently. Yet they're still going to hold firm against their, or with their beliefs when there is pushback. If they're challenged, they're like, no, this is actually what I believe in. And it's compassion. Challenges can come across as overbearing sometimes. And, I think for sometimes with people like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, maybe him holding, the gratitude and saging and everything came across as overbearing, or him sharing his beliefs came across overbearing. That whole toxic positivity hit piece that hit, which is so ridiculous, that can be a challenge for it sometimes. And I also feel, I do believe from watching a lot of his content and getting an overview and a feel for Justin, that he's likely very self-aware at this point of the nuance of his archetypes and how he comes across. The Guardian offers a firm hand to guide and form a path towards greater good. So again, it's not the pushover. It's not the martyr. It's not filling up someone's cup before themselves. It's a firm hand, and it's going to be coming from a grounded place. And there's a bottomless well of compassion for others, which can be also taken as a weakness by some. The Guardian finds identity and fulfillment by defending others. And if we look at it as weaving through both the creator and the sage, not just defending others, but reimagining a path forward, redefining things in support of defending others and upholding his values. They're great at listening and speaking. We saw that in the Nick Viall podcast. He was very great at listening. And supports the self-actualization of others, which we've seen over and over again in the podcast we've watched. Now, we're going to look at an interview, Justin Baldoni's mission to redefine masculinity in modern times. We're going to have a look at this. I love this conversation. And for me, it really pulls through the Guardian and how not just Justin himself, but the values he leads with is helping be the guardian of youth. I love this.
Line, which I was afraid of, by the way. And
talking
I said,
about
okay,
her
how do I say to him, go in and try it, but don't be afraid, or get in there, And there I was. And I said, it's okay to be afraid,
Yes.
but let's try it.
Yes.
And I was thinking about you, because I think I probably would have said at one point in my time, you're a big boy, you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy language.
But that's also, I think, okay, first of all, I just want to say the fact that
So I love that. And it's a reflection back to him of, I thought of you in that moment. I thought of a different way to guard my son against that toxic masculinity, or that, you're a big boy, go jump in. What are you afraid of? You can do it. And so it's even his message and values of Man Enough have had those ripple effects where other people are taking a moment to think, how can I reframe this and redefine how I interact with my son, with men, so that a young man grows up not having to override his own emotions, not having to override his own boundaries, not having to override what he feels is safe or right for him, but also having the courage and the self-awareness to go forward with things when it is actually right, but you might be a little bit scared. And that is a very nuanced conversation.
at least listen to them, there's no chance that I would be having this conversation. So the message, to answer your question, the message is very simple. As men, we need to embrace all of the parts of us that make us human. That's it.
It is.
It's
And
very simple.
In your book, you break it down. You say it's very simple, and I love how you break it down so that it is approachable. You have these 3 chapters. The first title, Boys Will Be Brave. And you write, somewhere along the way, as boys, we get trained to think the wrong things are brave. We get convinced that bravery means being so fearless that we don't show our emotions at all.
And this is Tamron Hall. I just love this interview, and I believe it's the second time they met. And they have great chemistry together as well.
Do you guys relate to that? Right? It's this misconception of what bravery is. It's this feeling that we're not brave unless we're running into burning buildings. When in reality, I believe that the bravest thing that a young boy and a man can do is to confront the parts of him that are dark, the parts of him that are scary, the parts of him that make him vulnerable.
Yeah.
Emotional bravery, I think is I don't want to rank bravery, but I would say it is.
I just love this whole interview. They're so good together.
Because we're constantly trying to prove our masculinity. That's the thing about masculinity. It's this idea that it can be at any point taken away from us.
Oh.
That can't happen with femininity.
Well, that's why I don't like when people say, "Oh, he's emasculating." I'm like,
I don't believe that's a real word.
it's not. It shouldn't be.
I think it's a made-up word that's really just about insecurity. Now, you can make a man feel insecure,
Yeah.
but you cannot take away his masculinity. So we've created an entire word that that's not real.
Okay.
Like the idea that if I ask you for directions, or if I ask you for help, or if I admit that I'm nervous today, because guess what? I was nervous this morning because you gave me a whole hour to talk about masculinity, that somehow I'm not a man. This idea that we have to present and posture and pretend that we know everything, when in reality, we're just trying to figure it out like everybody else.
It's so good. I'm captivated by the two of them together. It's such a great interview. And for me, it really captures all of his brand archetypes, to be honest. Now, this is Man Enough episode 1, Why Don't Men Talk? And we have a couple pieces from this we're going to play as well. So here, Justin is interviewing his dad around what he learned from Justin's grandpa around masculinity.
Care of the family. It was my job to take care of the family and make sure everything was good for them. So no matter what the circumstances, my dad was always there, and he was always strong, and we got through everything. You don't make excuses. You don't talk about your problems. That was the thing. You don't talk about your problems. You don't share your problems. You just deal with your problems. Growing up with, Clint Eastwood and John Wayne, and, these are images that this is what a man was, and so whatever we got at home and then what we got culturally, all that sticks with you. So you go around thinking you're supposed to be like that. It doesn't.
So you're acting.
So you're constantly acting.
It's sad, though.
I know.
Everyone kind of looks.
I love that, where and I feel that everyone can relate to that in some way. Obviously, this is through the lens of masculinity and growing up as a young boy or as a man, and what culture and generationally what you've been taught. And I feel that so many of us, and I think this is why we can all relate to Justin so much, who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to growing up being told like something specific is expected of you, or you should be a certain way, or present yourself in a certain way, or this is the traditional role that you should take? It's just such a fascinating conversation. This, again, everything I watch from them, I'm just riveted by. Justin is such a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom. And I really feel, and I have a couple things that I would do if this was me moving out of a quote unquote scandal like this, or a lawsuit like this. But I really believe, I'm just going to say it here, it's not about a rebrand. It's not about anything other than continuing to live by example after all of this. Honestly, just continuing to walk the talk.
Yeah, that's opening up. I never had these conversations with my dad. I dream about having these conversations.
I haven't even been able to have.
I know. So here we are having them now,
So
which is really cool.
Do you see what I do? I create experiences, force me to be vulnerable, and the people around me. That's why, I brought up, hey, let's start going to the driving range.
And I love that, because I talk about that often as well. I put myself in situations that challenge me intellectually. And also, I remember when I first started out really going down this path of self-development and like that inner healing and facing challenges. That was another thing that I did. I had a coach ages ago that would challenge me on that, of putting myself in situations that make me feel very uncomfortable as well.
I have this desire to get to know you in a totally different way. Not in the you're my dad, everything's great. You provided for me. But then they're like, who is my dad really? Because I think you're figuring out who you are, then I can figure out who I am. And then like I guess
I just love this. Can't say enough good things. And then going back to so good, this Rainn Wilson podcast interview, there's one thing I want to point out here. So for this clip, we're starting at minute 50.
This is not a women's issue. This is not something that women can fix.
Yeah.
This is something that we have to fix behind closed doors ourselves. And so Man Enough and our conversations around masculinity is a way in to showing men, not that we're bad, because the whole premise of my work with Man Enough is that men are good. I believe that men are good, and I love being a man. I lead with that. I've never said toxic masculinity. Other people have labeled me a feminist. And then I had to look up what a feminist meant because I didn't even know. I wasn't saying I'm a feminist, like, hey, woohoo. And then I subscribed to the notion that it's the definition of feminism is the radical notion that women are people. Okay, sure, then call me a feminist. Great. A woman is a person. And the Baha'i Faith, we're told that humanity can be likened to a bird. On one wing is female and the other wing is male, and it's not until those wings are equivalent in strength that the bird can fly. Great, I believe all of these things. Now, how can we make the world safer for women? By making
see, there we go. That's the Guardian. That's the Guardian archetype coming out.
the world safer for men. So my work is with men. My work is with men learning how to understand their feelings, hold their feelings, have conversations with other men, and learn how to be vulnerable.
And see, remember we talked about, especially with his human design, he's not here for everyone. He says, this is the conversation. I have the conversation for men.
Understand that we don't have to prove our masculinity at every given moment. And sometimes it is okay to be enough as we are, that we are allowed to feel, that we should be emotional, that we are sensitive by nature, but we've drowned that out. At a very early age, as Bell Hooks writes in A Will to Change, like we committed the first act of violence, which is called soul murder, as she writes it, where we essentially kill the parts of ourselves that allow ourselves to feel, and we become numb, and then we forget how to feel. So at 30 years old, when I went to therapy,
quoting Bell Hooks again, I am such a fan of Bell Hooks. I love that. So to summarize, I went a lot longer on this than I originally planned, but I just get so riveted and drawn into hearing him speak that I played a little bit longer clips than I had originally planned to. When we're looking at Man Enough, for me, it's not a podcast. It's not even just a brand. It's a cultural re-architecture project, if you will. It's a movement, ultimately. It's not just Justin Baldoni's brand. It's not just a podcast. It's not just a book. This is a cultural re-architecture project. It is a movement. And at its core, its vision, and Justin's vision is anchored into the creator, building a new blueprint for modern masculinity from the rubble of outdated norms. But this isn't just also art for art's sake, right? Remember I said it's not just up here. It's not just airy. It's not just fluffy concepts. We're really bringing it into the Sage, which is, it's thoughtful, it's intentional, it's truth driven. So that's where the Sage steps in, because his spirituality is very a grounded spirituality. It's not the magician. Justin Baldoni invites men into deep inquiry, asking hard questions about identity, vulnerability, power, and he doesn't shame them. He even says, I love being a man. This isn't about shame, right? It's about liberation. It's about getting them back in touch with who they are at their core. And it's not about posturing as a guru. He said, I'm open to seeing things differently. It's not dogma for him, from what I can see. He's learning and experiencing it out loud and storytelling. He challenges himself and he challenges his audience in real time to grow, to see things differently. And that is the creator and the Sage coming together. And then it's all kind of wrapped up into the Guardian. It's not soft. It's not passive. It's a fierce protector of emotional integrity, the Guardian. It's a fierce protector of moving his target audience forward. He doesn't just talk about feelings, right? It's not just, again, this airy concept up here where it's too ethereal and word salad. He defends the right for men to feel. He defends the right for men to be different than how they've been conditioned to be. He creates safe spaces for truth telling, not coddling. We saw that in the Nick Vile podcast where he challenged the woman that called in. And without saying it in a hard way, it was basically like, maybe you're the problem. Right? He said it much more eloquently than that. But he creates these safe spaces for truth, for challenging perceptions, for challenging norms. And you're probably going to feel uncomfortable, as you should. And therefore, that in and of itself, creating a brand that makes people potentially uncomfortable means the brand isn't for everyone. Because some people don't want to feel uncomfortable. Some people don't want to grow. Some people don't want to be challenged in how they see the world. But he draws his line in the sand and he challenges people, just like the guest on Nick Vile's podcast. He holds men accountable for doing the work. He says it's not going to be easy. And so when we look at these three archetypes together, I would say that is the architectural foundation of Man Enough, the creator, the sage, and the guardian. But it's not just nice guy energy. It's very bold, clear-eyed, right? It's not the magician. And it's cultural impact where he blends his vision, wisdom, and backbone. Now, if I was looking at two core branding moves moving forward out of these lawsuits and when he can come back, his team and him himself are very obviously taking the route that I think is the smartest route to take right now, which is just lay low. Everything you say can and will be used against you by the court of public opinion and probably Blake and Ryan. So laying low, I think Ryan and Blake should be laying low too, is the best thing. So I imagine this case is going to go forward. I can't see either side backing down. Therefore, we probably aren't going to see him for a bit, is the reality, I imagine. Now, core branding or moving forward after this, I would say number one is rebuilding trust. Now, hear me out. This isn't defending himself. This isn't rebuilding trust in the way of you, the listener here, do not trust him or do not trust his brand. One thing we do have to remember is a lot of people the vast majority of people consume their news through Google, which is legacy media. YouTube is second. So I know for us watching this and immersed in this and defending him and trying to uphold his values and be his voice when he can't be his voice right now, for us, it doesn't make sense. We're like, Ashley, rebuild trust. What are you talking about? Like, there's nothing to rebuild. There is. There definitely is, unfortunately, because the majority of people still get their news through legacy media. And I feel, and something I've said to a lot of people, I feel like this case is ultimately how it plays out is going to show who holds the most power right now. And this is where legacy media is fighting tooth and nail. Who holds the most power? Is it legacy media or is it social media? Is it the content creators? Is it the quote unquote mommy sleuths? And I feel this case is going to be a pivotal point in history of either it's like good or evil wins, right? The evil of legacy media and their paid manipulation campaigns and narrative control, toxic narrative control, or social media, finding truth, the truth seekers. Who's going to win? Because traditionally, up until this point in history, legacy media would win. And research still shows that people are getting most of their news from legacy media. So this rebuild trust, it's not through defending himself, just standing firm in his brand. He's said in interviews that he challenges himself to apologize immediately. So I genuinely believe that if he thought he had done something inappropriate, he would have apologized and taken responsibility for making someone feel uncomfortable. And the public doesn't need a detailed defense. And even people that pick up legacy media, they need to see that his integrity is stable and his behavior is consistent. That's what rebuild trust is like, look, even through the fire, even through the accusations, even through me having this campaign brought against me and these allegations brought against me, I still stand true in my brand. I am still stable in who I am. You can shake me. You can try to take me down, but my values are my values and I'm grounded in those values. That's how he's going to rebuild trust right now. And when he comes back, maybe a podcast on Man Enough, or selecting someone outside traditional legacy media where he owns the story to reaffirm his values could be really powerful. But again, don't think with Rebuild Trust that he needs to like apologize. I don't believe he needs to do that. I think right now he just needs to stay firm and show afterwards, I'm still who I said I am. Honestly. Number 2, control the narrative by living it publicly, which goes into number 1. People trust consistency more than they trust statements. And we are seeing this right now with Blake Lively. People aren't trusting statements that she's made, and also people aren't trusting the inconsistency in which she shows up. So she goes to a donut shop and she goes in with her hair a mess and her makeup not done and looking like the, more of the every woman. People don't trust that. They're like, this is fake. This is inauthentic. You're doing this to try and manipulate us. So what people trust right now, again, is consistency. Are you still who you say you are? I would say double down on existing commitments, the fatherhood, being man enough, emotional depth, faith, service, spirituality, like double down on what has been your brand. And I feel like now with this, after this is all done, he has so much of social media on his side that content creators will help him amplify that. I didn't know who he was before all this, to be quite honest. I never watched Jane the Virgin. So the brand shouldn't pivot. Blake is trying to pivot. I also think she probably would have done better staying true to who she was, owning the ruler archetype, and just going away for a bit. People trust consistency more than anything. It doesn't mean you can't change. It doesn't mean you can't evolve. It doesn't mean you can't be multi-dimensional, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. But when it's a hard pivot in the middle of a PR crisis, people don't trust it, as they shouldn't, to be quite honest, because it's intentional. So being true to who he was, or who he always was, and who he is. Now, it could look like showcasing, some behind the scenes from upcoming work when the time is right. This is all when the time is right. Posting reflective content around trust and integrity, fatherhood, core values that anchor him, and possibly partnering with non-performative respected figures in the emotional wellness or spiritual space. Might even be a new podcast with Rainn Wilson. Something like that could be really powerful. Now, this is a bonus one and really depends, because this could be risky. I'm not going to lie. So it really depends on, risk assessment and what's going on with the lawsuit. But when appropriate, potentially, and again, depends. Is he adding to his brand, speaking up of like when public figures are falsely accused, or when men have their masculinity and their beliefs used as weapons against them? How do you stay true to your values when everything you believe in has been used against you, quite literally in a court of law? That could be powerful. Power plays in Hollywood. Again, what happens when men try to do the right thing and it's still weaponized against them? Accountability versus character assassination, and really holding a conversation around this. Again, I'm not saying I would 100% do this. It depends. But it is something that could pay off huge. It could also be risky, depending on where public narrative is. You could also bring in other high integrity leaders, male and female, who've experienced similar smear tactics or narrative manipulation, and speak. Like, how do you stay true? Because this is a great question. How do you stay true to who you are in the face of not just a smear campaign, but public character assassination to the worst degree? Accusing someone of SH is the worst you can do. Pre-Me Too, people might have just rolled their eyes and been like, whatever, just whatever. It's probably made up. Post-Me Too, you can take a man out with that one statement. And it happened to him. He lost movies, he lost contracts, he lost awards, all from an accusation, which is sickening. People should be ashamed of themselves that they stripped him of awards and opportunities based on accusations alone. And also the conversation could be brought around of, we're looking at it from a perspective of redefining masculinity. Well, what happens when we weaponize certain things against young men? What is that teaching them? That no matter what they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. If they're in touch with their feelings. They're made fun of on the public forum. They're bullied. They're harassed. And if we are tough and, traditional men, well, then you also get accused of being an ass and a jerk and SH, et cetera, et cetera. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. How does that impact children? How does that impact young men growing up today? How does that impact parenting? I would love for someone to actually carry on that conversation and actually have difficult conversations around that, whether that's Justin or not. I think that's an important conversation moving forward. So I think ultimately what I would say is anchoring deeper into who he is and what his brand is. That's going to be his best bet now. His core brand moves moving forward are not about accountability and sense of like, I apologize. I take accountability for what I did. Because I genuinely believe that if he had done it, we would have seen proof. And I genuinely believe, based on what I've learned about him, I don't know him personally, that if he had done it, he would have, or felt as if he had acted inappropriately, he would have apologized at the time. So it's not about accountability. It's about alignment, deeper alignment. Not about image repair. It's about identity reinforcement. And not about silence or defensiveness. It's about elevation of voices, elevation of important values when the time is right. Right now, what he needs to do is stay silent when it's right to come back. So I would say this is overall reclamation. It's not damage control with him. And when you take that approach as well, it assumes your audience is intelligent enough to see the story shift over time from when the accusations were originally made to his proof to the, the arc within it and where it ends up. He's assuming from this perspective that, I don't need to explain to you. I don't really need to explain the nuances. You saw it, you watched it in real time. So I really believe all he needs to do is keep showing up as who he is. I do not see his brand as performative in the least. I don't see anything that he talks about with such depth and embodiment and knowledge and wisdom that you can't actually speak on these topics unless you've lived them and you believe in them. I believe that. So I would say it's an authentic brand, which you guys know, of course. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please share with someone. I thought we could all use a feel-good Justin Baldoni video after so much focusing on Blake and Ryan. And so I hope you really enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the clips I played. And so drop in the comments, do you see those brand archetypes play out? And what would you like to see next from Justin Baldoni? I'd love to hear from you. What do you want to see next from him? And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. What I found, and nobody wants to hear it.